Georgia's 2026 governor's race took a widely anticipated and mostly expected turn this week, but it was nonetheless a development that is hugely consequential despite months of speculation. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones did indeed announce that he is seeking to become Georgia's 84th chief executive during the 2026 midterm elections. And this is political update for Friday, July 11th, 2025. I'm Tim Darnell, happy to be joined as always by my friend and colleague Rick Folbaum. We have been speculating on this, as I said, for months, Rick, and we are at the beginning of our stream today. We were showing portions of the Lieutenant Governor's campaign announcement released on Tuesday of this week, very early in the morning, setting off a chain of events and news reports that really lead everyone to believe that the Lieutenant Governor is now really can be considered the front runner in this wide open 26 gubernatorial race.
Well, as you said, this was widely expected, although it took him a little while to make it official. But now it is official, and I've been reading your reporting this week, and you spoke with a Republican political consultant who said that there are very few people who take on the job of lieutenant governor who don't one day want to drop the lieutenant from that title and be the actual governor. So it does make sense to see Burt Jones entering the race. Of course, he will have to run in a Republican primary against the Attorney General, Chris Carr. They're the only two Republicans now in the race, and it'll be very interesting to see how the rest of the field shapes up. There are still a lot of people out there who have been named as potential candidates on the Republican side. Some Democrats also who have been named as potential candidates but have yet to throw their hat in the ring. But I think that, the lieutenant governor makes a very compelling case for his candidacy. His campaign ad that you mentioned that was released on Tuesday shows off his credentials, starting off with his upbringing here in Georgia, his football days at the University of Georgia, and then, of course, his years in the private and public sector. He is someone who has been on the scene. He's a familiar face and name to voters here in Georgia. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how this race on the Republican side shapes out between the two of them.
Let's talk about his background for just a little bit. He is from Middle Georgia in the community of Jackson, Georgia. He works in the family business, Jones Petroleum. He also has his own retail insurance brokerage firm, elected to the state senate in 2012, has only served one term as lieutenant governor, running successfully in 2022, the same election in which Brian Kemp was reelected quite handily to a second and final term as governor over another Democratic challenge from Stacey Abrams. He is a very strong supporter of President Donald Trump and was one of 16 unindicted co-conspirators. We have to mention this for his role as an elector who attempted to certify Georgia's 2020 presidential election for then President Donald Trump. How much, even though this case has been stalled in Fulton County, it was initiated by Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis in a series of unprecedented and historic indictments. How much of this do you believe this will play in Attorney General Chris Carr's attempts to cast some negative light on the Lieutenant Governor's gubernatorial aspirations?
I don't think this is going to be a very successful line of attack if the Attorney General decides that this is what he's going to pound away to try to make his case over Burt Jones. That case, those charges, as you mentioned, were dismissed. And certainly when it comes to Republican primary voters, I really would be very surprised if any of them would be swayed. A lot of these are Republican primary voters, are staunch Trump supporters. They probably had no problem with what Burt Jones did or was alleged to have done as one of those alternative jurors back in 2020. And they are more interested, I think, in what he has done as lieutenant governor, what he did as a state legislator. I think that voters here like to see that someone running for public office also has some experience in the private sector, and Burt Jones can certainly check off that box as well. But as far as trying to connect him to any kind of wrongdoing, that case that, of course, was famously brought by Fani Willis and which is still being held up for a number of reasons, I don't think that that's something that really is going to have much of an impact on the case. And certainly in the case of Burt Jones, who's been cleared and who is no longer a part of that case, no matter what happens to it, I don't think it's going to have an impact on his candidacy either.
You mentioned his entry possibly having an impact on other Republican GOP gubernatorial hopefuls. Let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has already ruled out a bid to challenge Democrat John Ossoff next year, who is facing what could be a pretty tough reelection battle in terms of the Democratic Party holding on to his Senate seat here in Georgia. She has gone on record in the past as saying she might consider a gubernatorial run, has not been impressed really with the field of candidates. How does Burt Jones' entry into the race impact her consideration of a gubernatorial bid, given the fact that you're talking about two very ardent supporters of the 47th president,
45th and
47th president of the United States, Donald Trump?
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to operate by her own playbook, and so I wouldn't be surprised if she decides to get into the race. But again, it's really sort of a crapshoot to know what her plans are. I think that most recently she has made headlines over the last week for once again bringing up unfounded conspiracy theories when it comes to the government's ability to control the weather. That is something that she talked about in the aftermath of the horrific flash flooding in central Texas. And I think that a lot of her Republicans, her Republican colleagues even, look at her, listen to some of the things that she says publicly, some of the things that she posts on her social media, and just kind of shake their heads. The Republican Party has a long history of choosing candidates that may look good on paper to primary voters, but cannot win in a general election. We've seen that time and again on a national scale, of course, not just here in Georgia, but thinking of several Senate races over the last dozen or so years where sort of fringe candidates have somehow made their way through the primary process, gotten the nomination, only to then lose in the general election. And I think that there are a lot of people who feel like if Marjorie Taylor Greene were to get into this race, that she might suffer the same fate.
Well, we know that from Burt Jones' campaign announcement that his leadership political action committee has $14 million or has already raised $14 million for his gubernatorial campaign. That is by far the most of any candidate. We haven't seen any figures from Attorney General Chris Carr, but on the Democratic side, Keisha Lance Bottoms, former Atlanta mayor, and also current state senator Jason Esteves, two of the more higher profile Democratic gubernatorial hopefuls, have both touted their fundraising prowess. Both are claiming that they have raised more money than the other candidate. They're both coming in at around $1.1 million. So from a fundraising standpoint, we're not seeing a lot of separation between Senator Esteves and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, are we?
No, you're right about that. And I was surprised to see the numbers so close, that $1.1 million raised figure that both Esteves and Bottoms are releasing. Of course, this is an opportunity, these fundraising totals, for a candidate to say, hey, I am legit. I have the momentum. I have the support. Look at how much money I'm raising. But you really have to sort of dig down into the sort of granular level of these figures and see exactly where that money is coming from. Is it coming from in-state? Is it coming from out of state? Is it coming from big donors who are donating a lot of money? Or is it coming from grassroots sources, people who are donating $100 or less? And that's what the candidates are trying to point to. They're digging through their numbers and bragging about the aspects that they find or they believe are most beneficial to them. But at the end of the day, both of these candidates are raising money at a pretty good clip at this stage of the game. And it'll be interesting to see if any of the other candidates are able to get anywhere near their fundraising totals. And if not, whether that will start to sort of pare the field down and winnow out some of the candidates who are having a more difficulty raising money.
Yeah, we have not heard any campaign finance reports or fundraising reports from the other two Democrats in the race. State Senator Derek Jackson, no word from his campaign. Businessman and pastor Ole Brown, no word from his campaign. In terms of getting into the race this early, we're still a year away, more than a year away. We have not heard any future announcements from some of the other rumored gubernatorial contenders, be it Michael Thurmond from DeKalb County, be it Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, or some of the other candidates who may or may not be rumored as gubernatorial candidates. The longer we wait, how much of a disadvantage are those rumored candidates facing in terms of the fact that we already have some fairly well-known names already out there, already hitting the ground running and raising money? Or do they automatically enter the race at more of a disadvantage if they wait and continue delaying making a decision on their future political plans?
I still think that there's plenty of time. If there is a serious candidate out there who has the support, who has the backing, who can raise the money, I still think that there's plenty of time for that candidate to get into the race and prepare for a primary election. While we're talking about the fundraising totals, 1.1 million, it sounds like a lot of money, of course. But in the world of politics, that's a drop in the bucket. These candidates are going to have to raise a lot more money than that. So, while we haven't heard from some of the other campaigns about their fundraising totals, I think we could probably assume from that their numbers are not great, which is why those numbers are not being made public or not being talked about so much. There is still time to go out and get that support. And I think there's also another aspect to this, and you know this well, Tim, is a lot of times candidates will get in the race not necessarily to win this particular race, but perhaps to set the groundwork for a future candidacy for another office down the line. And so you look at some of these candidates, and obviously some of them want to win the race that they are currently running for. But others may be looking to build their stature within the party, to build their name recognition. And certainly there's no better way of doing that than to run for office and to have people like you and me talking about them on podcasts and newscasts and everything like that, because it really does start to develop a foundation of awareness and knowledge. People begin to hear your name. They know who you are. They hear that you're raising money, and that can only help. Even if you don't win this race, there's always another race down the line.
There's always another race down the line. As you mentioned, we're looking at 2028, a hugely consequential presidential election. Another Georgia U.S. Senator will be up for re-election, Raphael Warnock, as well as all of the nation's United States congressional representatives. Georgia continues to be the battleground state in the nation that the entire political world continues focusing and watching, and we will continue to follow all of the latest breaking news and developments in Georgia's political scene here on Political Update on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. From my friend and colleague Rick Fulbaum, I'm Tim Darnell. Thank you for watching Political Update from Atlanta News First Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and political updates, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Listen to more of our Political Update podcasts by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.